Hey guys, we're back again on aircraft this week. This time we're going to be looking at Kinetic's 1/48 scale EA-6B Prowler kit. Let's open her up and take a look. Now, I'm going to start this review by saying I initially became aware of this particular aircraft and these markings through Fighter Town decals, as they're actually the ones who did the decal sheet for this kit. So that is something to be aware of, is that you can find a decal sheet of this separate from this kit. So depending on if you already have a Prowler kit that you want to use and just need the decals, that is an option. So we'll take a look at them in a little bit. Let's start off first with the fuselage halves. Now, I will preface this as well. I do have the old, both the old Airfix and the Revell kit. And I've got to say, of the three, so far, I'm liking this one the best. As we move into the surface deal, big advantage over both of the older two is we have nice recessed panel lines. I would also say overall shape is spot on for the 6B. And I also like, and hopefully this will show up on camera, here in the stairwell, they include some nice detailing in there as well. Overall, strong start. We do have some minimal detailing here on the internal sidewalls of the cockpit. Oh, that will need some painting up and detailing. Now, this is another piece I do like. We're given the wings, both the upper and lower halves, as one piece assemblies. So no need to potentially fuss with a complicated wing fold set if you don't want to. Additionally, the panel lines for where the wing folds are, and hopefully this is showing up on camera, are fairly evident. So that does make it a lot easier if you should decide to do a wing fold, which this kit does include the parts for. Now, I cannot comment to a direct comparison between the kit parts and, say, a aftermarket resin set. But once we get to them, no, they're not terrible. I will say that. Now, one thing I do like with this kit, as in comparison to the F-16 we looked at a couple weeks back, no oddball mold things that we got to cut off. So that is a definite mark improvement. The leading edge slats are nice, and as we flip it around, they have scored them where you need to cut them for the wing fold. That is another big plus. As we move on now to the lower half, we do have some landing gear bay detail. Not much, just pretty basic. No real complaint there. Also see some of the detailing here for the teeth of the wing fold. And again, very nicely detailed. And yeah, no real complaints that I can find there. Continuing on, we've got our cockpit nose and one of the ECM pods, as well as a couple of the antennas. Now, for this particular kit, it has the parts to build it as an ICAP 2. So if you want to build it as an earlier ICAP 1 or initial production, or as a later ICAP 3, you may need to potentially source some additional parts and modify. Fortunately, I haven't been able to find any exact references for what was changed for the ICAP 3. I do know there were a couple minor changes, but exactly what I cannot comment to. Now, as we look at the detailing, again, for a plastic kit, I would say this is more than good enough. I would say save your money, just use the kit parts. They should do you more than amply. I mean, it would only be if you wanted to either backdate or update. What I'd say you would need to get an aftermarket set. So that is another nice plus. Continuing on, we've got our elevators, which are two-piece assembly. Thankfully, they chose to do this bottom section as a separate piece and place the parts on the actual panel line, so that will keep things simple. Nose gear and nose gear bay, as well as our tail hook. And then we've got some of the parts for the wing folds here. Again, as I mentioned before, the detailing is more than adequate. And I would say you can probably do fine with just the kit parts for the wing fold. Next up, we've got a double sprue of our ordnance, including fuel tanks, another set of ECM pods, as well as our two of the injection seats spread across both sprues, some pylons, and a few other odds and end parts, as well as some of the landing gear and the wheels. So far, I mean, I've found no real complaints with this kit. Continuing on, we've got now our nose gear, as well as the rest of the nose gear bay. Now, this is where I did find some problems, namely some fairly sizable ejector pin that will need some cleanup. But as I continue on as well, here you can see a lot better the detailing they did for the wing folds. So, I mean, you don't really need an aftermarket set for the wing fold. Now, one area I did hear some stuff, and unfortunately I wasn't able to confirm it or not, is the depth of the intakes. I've heard some things that they might need to be a little deeper, but I cannot confirm that. And I'll also openly admit it was for a base A6 as opposed to the EA-6. But since they're basically built on more or less same airframe, you should find them to be fairly close. We got our compressor fans here, nicely done, no real complaints. Coming now, tail end of the parts. Got the flaps in two different configurations, either lowered or raised. Some additional slat parts are air brakes in the deployed position, as well as them enclosed, and a few other last parts for the wing folds, as well as the last couple wing pylons. The last opaque sprue contains a harm missile. Would have been nice if they also included the older Shrike, but no complaints there. It's your basic missile piece. It is nice they include it, but there's more than ample options for aftermarket. Now, the one major complaint I have with this kit is the canopy. They did the two main canopy pieces as separate halves. They split it down the middle. Fortunately for this aircraft, it's a single piece for both of those. So getting that to sit right and line up is going to be a bear. And it sucks because it's nicely detailed. I mean, it pains me that they did it. Now, I do like that they did this in clear as opposed to trying to do it in the filament color that they're supposed to have. So it allows you to get it to your individual taste. So that's a nice thing that they did there. So give me a second to get parts back in and we'll take a look at decals and instructions. Okay, as I mentioned before, the decals are actually designed by Fightertown, And that's how I initially learned of this aircraft. I've got to say, the decals are one of the brightest that I've ever seen. The greens are really nicely bright. Same with the yellows. All of the coloring is just superb. And try and get this as clear as I can on camera. Now, they are printed by Kinetic, so you should have no issue basically use them as is. And as I mentioned before, I do believe Fighter Town still has them available. So if now you already have an EA-6B kit you want to use and build of this particular aircraft, you do have that option if you can't find this kit. As with all aircraft kit, construction begins in the cockpit and builds out from there. I do like how they are nicely showing you how to build it out, much like that F-16 kit. After you build up the cockpit, you then start buttoning up the fuselage. And I do like that they do reinforce how to cut the wings and flaps, slats, all that for the wing fold. That I cannot thank Kinetic enough for that. That is a very smart inclusion. And now, depending on how you decide to do the wings, you build those up next. Decide on your configuration. Get this to turn the page. Once you do that, you attach the wings to the fuselage, continuing on to build up the landing gear, as well as all the little antennas and the like, for adding all your pylons, or alternatively, assembling the wing folds. More antennas, tail, more on the wing fold. I do like that they also include nice reference as to the exact alignment for the wing fold, of exact positioning in the wings, is that something that can be a little tricky. After that, finishing up the attachment of the canopies before moving on to our weapons. And then obviously our markings. Now they give you two different versions of this aircraft, earlier and late version. So you will need to somewhat decide before you start painting. But after that, it's straightforward from there. So, overall, having been able to look at now 3 different versions of this aircraft in plastic, I gotta say, this is probably my favorite. It's smartly designed. You get a lot of value in the box. I mean, it's definitely a kit that, you really don't need to add anything to it, save for if you want to either update or backdate. So I would definitely have to say this is probably the best option to go with if you want to build an EA-6B, period. But obviously, if you already got one in your stash and you may have already invested some in aftermarket for it, I would say you don't have to totally dump the older version and get it. But if you don't already and want to build one, this is the one I would say you should go with. So that was a look at Kinetic's 1/48 EA-6B kit. Nice little kit. Definitely an improvement over some of the older versions. So, until next time.